Hello, dear learners. Welcome to the MOOC on Rural Development in India. In this unit, we'll discuss about sustainable and climate resilient practices in the context of rural development. And this lecture is basically designed not merely to provide the conceptual clarity, but to help you critically understand how sustainability, resilience, and rural livelihoods are interconnected in the context of environmental and climate change. So, let us first know about the paradigm of rural development, changing paradigm of rural development. So, what happened? Rural development has undergone a profound transformation over the past few decades. Earlier, what happened? Development efforts in rural areas primarily focused on increasing agricultural production, expanding irrigation, and improving infrastructure. While these efforts contributed to the economic growth, they often neglected environmental sustainability as well as social equity. So, as a result, what happened? Rural areas began facing serious challenges such as land degradation, declining soil fertility, water scarcity, and other socio-economic inequalities. So, in recent years, the emergence of climate change as a global crisis has further intensified these challenges. Now, what is the climate change? We have already discussed in the earlier session. So, climate change is now recognized as one of the most serious environmental threats, and these impacts are particularly severe in rural area. Why? Because the rural livelihood or rural households are heavily dependent on natural resources and climatic conditions. Therefore, the concept of rural development has expanded beyond the economic growth to include the sustainability and resilience. Now, this focus is on creating systems that are environmentally sound, economically viable, as well as socially inclusive, while also being capable of adapting to various changes due to climate variabilities. So, now let us discuss about sustainable rural development and sustainable development. So, what is sustainable development? What do you mean by sustainable development? Sustainable development refers to the development that meets the needs of the present generation without compromising the ability of future generation to meet their own needs. It emphasized a balanced approach to economic growth, social inclusion, and environmental protection. The main goal is to ensure long-term prosperity and well-being for both people as well as the planet. Thus, if we apply this concept to rural areas, then the sustainable rural development is about improving the lives of people in rural areas, not just for today, but for generations to come. And thus, it means finding ways for villages and rural communities to grow and thrive without the cost of exploiting natural resources they depend on. And this idea is about to make progress while also protecting what they have. So, true sustainable rural development looks at the bigger picture, how the economy, society, and environment are all deeply connected. Now, let us imagine a village blazed with a dense forest and a flowing river and fertile land full of natural resources. Yet, the villagers struggle to improve their quality of life. Why? Because due to lack of proper use and awareness. And the sustainable development in this case is development of the village, but it should not harm the forest or pollute the river. Instead, using these resources wisely, like supporting ecotourism, organic farming, or small scale fisheries, can improve livelihood. Let the river flow, keep the forest protected, but use them properly. So, this is the essence of sustainable development that benefits all without harming nature. And the word sustainable intensify this development as holistic approach, including economic viability, social equality, and environmental sustainability, so that both current and future generation can live well. So, as discussed above, the rural area is crucial to attaining development which must be sustainable, and thus the concept of rural sustainable has gained momentum. Early research on rural sustainability mainly focused on sustainable development of agriculture to mitigate the environmental impact caused by intensive farming. However, the Food and Agricultural Organizations of the United Nations created the concept of sustainable agricultural and rural development SARD, which basically stresses food security, employment, economic development, poverty alleviation, and ecosystem protection. Another researcher highlighted how the idea of rural sustainability has now shifted from agriculture and economy towards the more holistic concept of socio-economic integration. Thus, we can define the sustainable rural development as a holistic approach with aim to improve the quality of life of rural people by building capacities that encourage community participations, improve health and education, ensure food security, protect the environment, and support sustainable economic growth, and thus community can break the cycle of poverty and realize their full potential. So this is about the sustainable development as well as sustainable rural development. So we can, to achieve this sustainable rural development, we need to adopt certain sustainable practices. So before discussing these practices, let us first focus on the rural areas as a multifunctional systems. Why it is important in case of rural areas. So rural areas perform a variety of important functions because at national and global level, they are the primary source of food, they are the primary source of raw material that support biodiversity, serve as a space for cultural and social life. They also play a critical ecological role by maintaining environmental services such as soil regeneration, water purification, and climate regulation. However, these multi-functional roles are increasingly under threat. Why? Due to unsustainable practices and climate change. And the degradation of natural resources not only affect agricultural productivity but also undermines the ecological and social function of rural areas. Therefore, sustainable rural development must address all these functions simultaneously. Now come to the climate change and its implications for rural livelihood. We have already discussed in details about this climate change and impacts in the last discussions, that the climate change basically affect various aspects of rural life that includes agriculture, water resources, and food security. Moreover, small and marginal farmers, marginalized groups are particularly vulnerable because they have limited resources to adapt to changing climatic conditions. So, in the absence of effective adaptation strategy, climate change can lead to increased poverty, migration, and social instability in rural areas. Now, coming to the concept of resilience or climate resilience in rural development. So, thus the concept of resilience in rural development arise. So, as a response to the challenges we have discussed above, the concept of resilience comes, and this resilience means basically the ability of rural systems and communities to withstand or adapt to and recover from different shocks and stresses that are caused by various climate changes or climatic changes in climatic variabilities. So, improving the resilience of rural livelihood is essential. Why? For mitigating the adverse impact of climate change, resilience is not just about coping with immediate shocks, but it also should cover the capacity to build long term adaptive ability. So, does it involves enhancing the skills, knowledge, and resources of rural communities, as well as strengthening the institution and support systems. It also requires a shift from reactive approaches to proactive and preventive strategies. As an example, we can cite about the village of Hiware Bazar in Maharashtra, which actually presents a classic background of rural distress before adopting climate resilient practices. What happened there? From the late 1970s to early 1990s, it was a semi arid village that had lost most of its natural resources. Forests were degraded, water sources had dried up, and agricultural land became largely unproductive. Despite having about 795 hectares of cultivable land out of 976 hectares, only around 12% was actually cultivated due to severe water scarcity. Moreover, the region received low and highly erratic rainfall, and that worsened the situation. As a result, the village faced acute poverty, with the majority of households living below the poverty line. Lack of employment opportunity led to large-scale migration to the urban area, especially among the youth. Then social issues such as alcoholism and gambling further aggravated the condition. So, as a result, the village faced acute poverty, with the majority of households living below the poverty line. Lack of employment opportunity led to large-scale migration, especially among the youth. Then social issues such as alcoholism and gambling further aggravated the conditions. As a response, the village adopted a watershed-based development approach that focuses on soil and water conservation measures such as contrabanding, check dams, percolation tanks, and afforestation. Alongside physical intervention, strong community institutions were developed under the leadership of local governance. The villagers collectively decided to regulate water use, ban water intensive crops, and promote sustainable agricultural practices. Therefore, the Hiwari Bazar's background reflects a situation of ecological degradation, economic hardship, as well as social instability. Now, coming to the some strategical approach for sustainable and climate resilient practices. If you see, the key strategy includes the strengthening the extension systems and training programs to promote the integration of local and scientific knowledge, to enhance the communication between research institution and farmers, to increase the awareness through media and education. Now, let us discuss certain sustainable and climate resilient practices that can be carried out in rural India. Sustainable and climate resilient practices in rural India are increasingly evolving as a response to the growing challenges of environmental degradation, climate variabilities, and declining farm profitability. Traditional agricultural system, which once ensured ecological balance, have been gradually replaced by chemical intensive practices that have led to soil degradation, depletion of groundwater, and increased vulnerability of crops to climate stress. So, in recent years, there has been a significant shift toward more sustainable, regenerative, and climate resilience approaches that aim to restore ecological balance while improving the rural livelihood. One of the central elements of this transition is the adoption of organic and regenerative farming practices. So, farmers are moving away from synthetic fertilizers and pesticides and instead using compost, biofertilizers, and natural pest management techniques. So, these practices basically help in restoring soil health, thus by it improves the organic matter content and microbial activity. Healthy soil not only enhance productivity but also increase the capacity of land to retain water. Closely linked, another one is the promotion of climate resilient cropping systems. Farmers are encouraged to diversify crops through intercropping and crop rotation rather than relying on one single crop or monoculture. The reintroduction of indigenous and locally adapted crop varieties plays a crucial role in this process, as these crops are naturally more tolerant to local climatic conditions, pests, and other diseases. So, such diversification reduces the risk of total crop failure, as well as it ensures a more suitable and stable income for farmer even under uncertain climatic conditions. Another important dimension is sustainable water and land management. Practices such as mulching, compost application, moisture conservation that improve the soil structure and water retention capacity. Efficient irrigation techniques such as drip irrigation along with rainwater harvesting and watershed management help to address the water scarcity. So these practices not only conserve natural resources but also these are helpful in essential for sustaining rural livelihood in the face of climate change. Another one is the integration of digital technology and innovation that has further strengthened the climate resilient rural development. Mobile based platform and digital tools are being used to provide farmers with training, track sustainable practices and offer real time guidance. And these technologies make sustainability measurable and verifiable, and that enables better monitoring of agricultural activity and improving decision making at the farm level. Another unique and emerging aspect of sustainable practices is the linkage between environmental sustainability and economic incentives. Farmers adopting eco friendly practices can now benefit from systems such as carbon accounting or carbon credits. How it can be happen? By reducing the use of chemical inputs and adopting regenerative methods, farmers contribute to lowering greenhouse gas emission and can earn additional income. And this approach makes sustainability not only environmentally beneficial but also economically attractive and scalable. Equally important is the role of community participation and capacity building. So, without community participation, we cannot imagine sustainable rural development. Sustainable rural development is not achieved through individual efforts alone, but through collective actions. Training programs, farmers groups, and local leadership initiatives help in disseminating the knowledges to encourage the adoption of sustainable practices. Community based approaches that strengthen local institutions, enhance social cohesion, and as well as build long term resilience by empowering people with skills and knowledge. In addition, the concept of another concept is the circular economy. It is gaining importance in the rural sustainability. What happened? This involves converting waste into valuable resources, such as using urban organic waste to produce compost for rural farms. So, such systems create a link between urban and rural areas and also reduce environmental pollution and provide low cost inputs to the farmers. So, this integrated approach ensures efficient resource use and contributes to both environmental conservation as well as economic development. The next one is integration of indigenous knowledge systems. The integration of indigenous knowledge with modern science helps in promoting sustainable and climate resilience rural development by combining traditional wisdom with improved techniques. A good example is zero budget natural farming in Andhra Pradesh, where farmers use traditional inputs like cow dung and plant based formulation along with scientific training and extension support. And this improves soil health, reduces cost, and enhances resilience to climate variability. So, these are some sustainable and climate resilience practices that are adopted in rural areas or in case of rural development. Now, come to the government intervention that supports the sustainable and climate resilience practices in rural India. The government of India plays a crucial role in promoting sustainable and climate resilient practices through a wide range of schemes and policy initiatives. One of the key interventions is the National Mission for Sustainable Agriculture that focuses on making agriculture more resilient by promoting integrated farming system, improving soil health and enhancing water use efficiency. It particularly targets rain-fed areas, helping farmers adapt to climate variability and improve productivity and sustainability. Another important initiative is the promotion of farmer producer organizations. By organizing small and marginal farmers into collective, the government improves their access to market, to credit as well as to technologies. So this strengthens their economic resilience as well as it supports sustainable agricultural practices. The government also supports eco-friendly farming practices through initiatives like zero budget natural farming that have been already discussed. Then the next one is the another resource management scheme related to water conservation and sanitation, such as rural water supply and sanitation missions that improves water security and public health. This intervention reduce vulnerability to climate induced water stress as well as it contributes to sustainable rural development. The promotion of renewable energy is another major area of intervention. Programs like National Solar Mission and Bioenergy Initiative that encourages the use of solar power, biogas and biomass energy in rural areas. This reduce dependence on fossil fuel, lower carbon emission and provide reliable energy for agriculture as well as other rural livelihoods. Alongside this, additionally, initiatives like the National Bamboo Mission that promote sustainable livelihood by encouraging cultivation of bamboo, a low input and climate resilient crop. And this supports income diversification while also contributing to the carbon sequestration and environmental conservations. So environmental conservation is the further strengthened through programs like the Green India Mission, which basically focuses on afforestation, ecosystem restoration, and increasing carbon sink. Such nature-based solution enhance ecological resilience and support rural communities dependent on forest. So we have discussed about the sustainability, rural sustainability, sustainable rural development, climate resilience, and what is the link between this all this in the context of rural development. Therefore, in the conclusion, we can say that the sustainable and climate resilient rural development represent a holistic and integrated approach to addressing the complex challenges that are being faced by the rural areas. It needs a combination of environmental conservation, economic development, as well as social inclusions. So, with this, I come to the conclusion of today's lecture. Thank you.